Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm reviewing this, the 3T Strada Italia, a very radical, extreme looking aero carbon race bike, vying for your attention and trying to tempt you away from the more obvious choices, like a tarmac, a Madone or an Aero. But does it have the performance and speed to really match those rivals? I've been riding it here in the Cotswolds on my local roads and also in Italy, taking part in the Strada Bianca Gran Fondo, which I highly recommend. My video experience on that is linked down below in case you missed it. So the bike does deliver on many fronts: speed, handling, comfort, tyre clearance, now 34mm, but there are a few quirks and a price that may put you off. So we'll go through all those, the pros and cons, the likes and dislikes in today's video. So let's talk about, probably should start at the beginning, because you might remember the original Strada launched back in 2016, 2017. That was a very radical, ahead of its time aero carbon race bike designed around a 1x drivetrain and 28mm wide tyres, which back then, lest we forget, were wide for the time, but now 28 is probably narrow. We're all running 30 and 32 and wider and beyond. But back then, the bike was ahead of its time and the backlash to it was pretty brutal. I rode a bike and reviewed it at Row CC and it did ride extremely well. It was fast and comfy, but the gearing was a limitation, and eventually the company relented and launched a 2x version. But by then, the damage along with the Pro Team saga was probably done. Just like the original Strada, the bike is all about aero, max aero. We have some very slender fork blades, a very narrow head tube, but deep here, which is a trend on modern aero race bikes, and a very distinctive flared Coke bottle down tube to shield the water bottles from the airflow along there, and a time trial-esque seat tube hugging the rear wheel, and very compact rear triangle, and of course an aero seat post. So it looks aero, and according to the Bible of aero testing, Germany's Tour magazine, it tests as well as a specialized tarmac and a Pinarello dogma. So it is as aero as it looks. And this new bike, while radical looking, isn't quite as compromised. As I mentioned, you can ride 1x or 2x, but then the geometry and tyre clearance is definitely a step in the right direction for us regular cyclists who want a race bike but more comfort. Firstly, tyre clearance is very generous indeed at 34mm, and then the geometry is more laid back than a race bike. Not endurance laid back, but a bit more laid back than a race bike. So a higher stack to put the handlebars a bit higher, and the longer wheelbase for more stability when doing a Gran Fondo like a Strada Bianca. And then the other big story and the real USP of the Strada Italia is the fact the frame is handmade in Italy. Most carbon frames are made in Asia, and that's cool, but 3T a handful of years ago invested in bringing manufacturing back to the HQ in Italy with a very unique and very clever filament wound process, with a mold that the carbon filament is wound around to create the main tubes and then put in a mold and then cured overnight to create the amazing frame. And all that workmanship is on display with a clear coat over the top, so you can see the weave of carbon fiber, and I think it looks amazing. Really cool to see the carbon weave on show and not hidden away underneath a heavy layer of paint. And the frame is light, a claimed 950 grams, which is very good and similar to a Canyon Aero, so no weight penalty for that manufacturing process. And this entire bike, as you see it right now, with no pedals, is 7.5 kilos. So yeah, pretty lightweight for a bike like this. Not the lightest. The tarmac is way lighter, of course, but similar to a Canyon Aero and lighter than a few other bikes which are nudging towards 8 kilos and beyond. Let's start the ride impressions with the original Strada, which I was one of the few people to probably like. I remember it being fast and smooth, and yeah, the gearing was a bit limited back then, but this bike reminds me of that original in how fast it is and how smooth it is. And now the gears work. 1x13 Explore on this bike today, or 2x12, as I've also had on the bike, thanks to a very clever UDH dropout that SRAM really push and now give you the benefit, the freedom to go 1x or 2x. But how fast is it really? Well, let me do a lap of the Just Right bike test track to find out. Riding around my test track at an average speed of 20 miles per hour, the 3T recorded an average power of 189 watts, placing it behind both the BMC Team Machine R and Canyon Aero CFR, but ahead of the Specialized Tarmac, which does reflect my impressions of the speed this bike offers. So that is how fast this bike is. And what's really impressed me most about riding a bike for the last few months is how rapid it feels. Some bikes feel fast, they feel quick, but this bike feels on another level. And when riding between 35 and 40 kilometers per hour, it just flies along. It just sails along the road with so little effort. It's a sensation that few aero bikes really exhibit, more so than a Tarmac and even the Canyon Aero. And probably the BMC Team Machine R comes the closest to just how quick this bike feels between my legs. All very subjective, I know, but based on my experience of testing bikes for the last 20 years and riding them on the same roads and the same routes at the same speeds and powers. So the feeling of speed on a bike is just fantastic. It feels so quick and a lot of fun to ride as a result. It's also very smooth as well, which I think a race bike, a fast bike, needs to be these days, especially if you're dealing with my local roads. If you've ever been to the Cotswolds, you'll know what I mean. So having the comfort as well as speed just makes for a bike that's fun to ride and enjoyable to ride. And I've had different tyres on the bike, 30s and 32s, and regardless of the tyre size, it's smooth, no matter how wide you go. And a space for up to 34, which I've not tried yet, but I guess I could put those Pirelli 35s in there. But like I say, even with 30, the bike is smooth enough for me, definitely. Now, where the bike becomes a little unstuck and a bit of a challenge to recommend is the geometry and the fit. There are only a few sizes, but luckily I fit this 56 very well. I do like the fact the stack is higher, the head tube is taller than a race bike. Not quite as extreme as an endurance road bike like an MV3, so the fit and position is somewhere between a race bike and an endurance road bike, I think. It's a fit I found to work really well. I got really used to it and it does feel similar to other bikes. Doesn't feel too alien, but the first ride definitely felt a bit quirky. But now I've got it all set up, it's good. But I don't really feel any benefit of that slack seat tube angle. And given the way race bikes are going with short cranks and extreme aero positions and steeper seat tube angles, seemingly the next trend, I think 3T might have gone the wrong direction here. And then the geometry itself, yeah, it's pretty good. At times it's quite docile and definitely got that endurance bike vibe. It's very easy to ride a long distance at high speed. It's great when riding gravel roads, dirt roads like those in a Strada Bianca. Gives you that confidence to really smash down fast gravel sectors and know the bike will be doing what you expect it to do. But on the flip side, it doesn't display that explosiveness, that rapid sudden change of direction that a race bike does offer, and why race bike is so much fun to ride. But that said, I quite like this all-road space category this bike is being positioned in. A nice middle ground between a race bike and an endurance road bike. Now, for a frame made in Italy, you are expecting the price to be fairly high, and you're not wrong. But a frame set price of £5,000 is about the same as a Specialized S-Works Tarmac made in Taiwan. So on its own, frame to frame, it's not too bad, but the company offers quite a small range of complete bikes, starting from £9,400, which is very expensive indeed, up to nearly £13,000, and the bike here is nearly £12,000 with a SRAM Red AXA group set, that 3T Torno carbon crankset, and Zip 353 NSW wheels. But you are paying for a frame made in Italy, and that may be a factor in you choosing this over something else that isn't made in Italy. Let me know your thoughts on how much you care about where a frame is made by dropping a comment down below. Now, let me share some likes and dislikes on the 3T Strada Italia. We'll start with the stuff I do like. I love the fact it's made in Italy, which is really cool, and more of that would be good to see. I do like the distinctive looks. It's definitely a bike that grows in you the more you spend time with it, and it does look better in the flesh. I like the speed, of course, who doesn't? The comfort as well, and space with wide tyres, wider than most race bikes, as fast as this one here. And the fact we have a UDH dropout, so you can fit a SRAM Explorer 1x group set or a more conventional 2x if you want. So future-proofed if you want to go down that route. I see more bike brands going this way in the future. Trek do it with their Madone. I'm sure Specialized and Canyon will follow suit as well. But there are a few downsides as well. The biggest one for me, and one I can't get my head around, is why the seat tube angle is so slack, about 1 degree slacker than most other race bikes, and does mean you have to use a inline seat post, which gives me the fit I need, but I can't see any reason or benefit for having a slacker seat tube angle than is conventional. So that's a bit odd. The internal routing works well, but you have to use their own stem. You can't use an FSA or a Data or an MV. You have to use a stem here. At least it does come in a range of options. I do like the fact we have a 2-piece setup, so you're free to change the handlebar to suit your preference and requirements. So to sum up, there is a lot to like about the new 3T Strada Italia, but there are a few drawbacks. With its price and distinctive looks, it's probably a hard sell for many cyclists. You really have to love the design and be okay with some of its quirks. But if you are looking for something different from the mainstream, then the bike is definitely worth considering. And if you want to see a video of me suffering through Italy in the amazing Strada Bianca Gran Fondo, which I highly recommend, and I rode it on this very bike with a 2x setup, then watch the video on screen right now.